How can you tell if we're in a buyer's market or a seller's market? Well, stay tuned. I'll tell you how. That's a really good question, and it really depends on the numbers you're looking at. So according to the Canadian Real Estate Association, the average price is up 1.72% year over year from this time last year. But that includes all the provinces and all the territories in all of Canada. So let's look at just the Toronto market and the resale stats there. Before we dive right into the numbers, I want to give a shameless plug to our podcast. If you're commuting to work and you have all this free time, why don't you tune into our podcast? In my last podcast with my good friend Charles Messina, we talked about the difference between condo and freehold investing and which one is better. So make sure you check that out in iTunes and Google, whatever you go to. It's called Boardwalk Talks. Search up my name, Kenneth, and you'll be able to see our podcast and listen to it as well too. So the number I like to really use to determine between the seller's market and a buyer's market is the sales to new listings ratio. And it's just that. It basically takes the number of new listings and a number of past sales, and you divide the two numbers and you get a ratio. So if you get 10,000 new listings on the market, 5,000 sales, that leaves you with another 50% of listings for next month to sell. So in theory, it should be 50% throughout and that'd be balanced. Well, I like to say that if it's 60% or higher, that means you're in a seller's market, which basically means that there's more sales versus new listings to replenish those sales next month, right? So everyone's fighting over the same amount of listings. A 40% ratio or below is a buyer's market, which means that there's more new listings that come onto the market than there are sales. Make sense? So last month in June 2019, there was 8,860 sales in all of the Toronto Real Estate Board, and this got replenished with 15,816 new listings, giving us a sales to new listing ratio of 56%. So remember, anything about 40 to 60% is a balanced market. A 50-50 is a perfectly balanced market, meaning that there's enough inventory to replenish the amount of sales going on. And if you look at detached homes in Toronto, the sales to new listing ratio is 50.8%. Perfectly balanced. However, not so good luck for the sellers in York region. There's a sales to new listing ratio of 39.2%, making it more of a buyer's market up there. So for downtown Toronto condo owners, it's more of a seller's market, where the sales to new listing ratio is 58.7%. That trend is slowly edging downwards though, and I think it's going to be more of a balanced market sooner or later, but right now it's still a seller's market. There's a lot of other factors you can use to determine the overall health of the Toronto Real Estate Board, such as the average price, number of units sold, average days on market, and etc. But let's dive into the Toronto numbers for a second. The average price of the overall Toronto Real Estate Board right now is $832,703. The average price of a detached home in Toronto is just over $1.3 million, and for York region is $1.15 million. And the average price of a condo in the core of downtown Toronto is just over $706,000. To me, that's kind of crazy. It's a little bit high, but it's still a seller's market, so maybe it's a good time to trade up if you're thinking about that. We've had two major government events that happened over the past 2 years, and that was the stress test of January 2018 and the Fair Housing Act of April 2017. And in the news recently, the Bank of Canada announced a lower benchmark rate, making the stress test a little bit lower at 5.14% for a qualifying rate versus 5.34%. So I think there's still room to grow in the market, and you can see here that the Greater Toronto Area market has actually bounced back from the January 2018 stress test, but not so much from the April 2017 Fair Housing Act. This is certainly the case for detached homes in Toronto and York region. However, downtown Toronto condos don't seem to be affected by either of these two events, and the prices just keep going up. And I guess it kind of makes sense. They are the more affordable housing option for all the housing options out there. So as you can see, the numbers are open to so much interpretation. To get an accurate analysis of your local area market or your home or your investment property, give us a call. Check out www.broadviewavenue.ca and click on the button to get a 15-minute phone call with us. Talk soon.